One was actually forgetting my senses, because I'm so happy. Like super overjoyed with how happy that feels like.
That's a luxury, yeah. But when you're happy, do you not have like heightened senses though?
I'm just so happy I forget my senses. I'm not thinking about how my body feels or how my fingers are tingling or anything. I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that went so well.
Have you ever been like so worried or stressed that you eat something and you almost can't taste it?
Yeah.
You know, has anyone had that? Yeah. That's how like powerful it is, you know. You kind of lose like your mind can really like do some crazy things to yourself. I remember back to times when I'm real stressed, you know, like food didn't have taste and, you know, things like you'd get into bed and something like, you know, nice sheets, it's just not, there's no sense. It's just your mind's so screwed up on this worry that like it takes things away from you. Why I got you to list some senses is because different people like have different ones that they associate to things. So, you know, with females, scent is a really big one. You know, they have a lot of association with that. With guys, you know, it might be different, but, you know, everyone kind of has these different senses that they can remember and associate to things. And it's, you know, the different ones are, you know, 5 senses that stimulate response. There's like sound, so, you know, music. You know, if you were having a real good day and you listened to a song, one particular song, that would kind of be what you associated with that really good day, and then the next time you listen to it, it would kind of bring back that feeling. You know what I mean? Whereas with a bad song, you know, I remember I was with my friend and we were driving home the next morning from some party back when we were young, and we were listening to the song, and then he got pulled over by a cop and he got DUI'd. And it was the next day, but like, and now whenever I hear that song, you know, already if he hears that song, we're just like, we've got to go, like, it's not, it's like a depressing song, that song's ruined, like, and, you know, that's how strong this sort of stuff is, like, and different people have different senses that they associate to things. You know, like war, guys that go to war and gun sounds and loud things like that, you know, when they come back and there's like a car backfires or something, it freaks them out and they go back into that state. Like, that's, you know, how powerful it is. Phones, like one of the reasons why sales floors do well when they get more people is because they get like this roar to them. And, you know, when you go in, it's kind of like you just hear all these phones going, and it kind of like, you know, it just gets you into a real, you know, like sort of good state. And breathing, you know, the way, you know, if I've heard boxers and things and runners, sprinters and stuff say, you know, that when they hear their own breathing or their opponent's breathing, it gets them into like a state. And so there's sound, there's sight. You know, like when like someone comes out onto a stage and they see a crowd, it brings, you know, their state up. You know, these are all the different senses. You know, if an athlete goes to a running track or a court, just the sight there just it means like, you know, game mode. And then there's touch. So like when guys are, you know, boxing, they're like taping up. You know, that sort of touch is like how they're getting into the state. Like some people hold hands. You know, and then there's even taste too. Like you've probably seen a lot of baseball players. I don't know how often it happens now. They chew tobacco and spit it out. A lot of people chew gum. It's because, you know, that's their way of getting into that state. That's the taste. When their brain has that taste, it knows like it's that time. You know what I mean? Some people coffee, Red Bull. You might know with Red Bull, so you have a Red Bull. It takes a while for the caffeine to hit your bloodstream, but have you ever noticed that as soon as you have the taste, it's like instant, you kind of feel like a bit awake? Or coffee, the same thing. It's like because your brain knows what's coming after that taste and it kicks in right away. It's like how placebos work with drugs when they do tests. That's how powerful your brain is. And then, you know, smell. So sometimes when people go to a gym or whatever, or the smell of their office, they remember that smell, and that's what means work. Often people can think of different smells, like this is home, this is outside, this is the gym, and that kind of changes the state, and that's what they associate. So that's why, you guys will have different ones that are more powerful for you. And the trick is to use these things to get you into like your ideal state. So when something goes good, like if you close a deal, and when you're in a good mood, or if you play the positive thought in your head and it all goes well and you feel that emotion, like anchor it to a sense. Because what will happen is you'll put more positive rocks on. So let's say it's, let's say it's selling, and you sell someone, and then you want to feel that emotion go, but you also want to tie it to something like this, so that you can really anchor it to something. Because then the next time that happens, if you listen to that song, it'll pick you up and put you back in that state. That's just how it works. So, has anyone heard of this Pavlov's conditioning?
Yeah.
When I first heard about it at university, I thought it was bullshit, and then then I heard back about it, and I actually thought about it, and I was like, wow, this is actually real stuff. So, who hasn't heard about it? Okay, so I'll just quickly describe it. So, there was this dude called Pavlov, and there was a dog, and he had food. And what happened is, if you generally, and there was a bell. So I just got to get my facts right on this one. Yeah, so I mean, if you have a dog and a bell, right, and there's a dog and you just ring a bell at it, it doesn't do anything. Then if you have a dog and then you ring a bell and then you give it food, or you give it food and then you ring the bell after it, and you do it enough times, even the dog is anchoring sound to getting food, which it likes. And it's putting positive rocks in its head, and it's a dog, it can do these things. So this is how powerful it is. And if it adds enough positive rocks to its head, if it does it enough times, then, if the dog just hears the bell, it'll start salivating and wait and thinking it's going to get food. So it actually forms like a condition to a sound. And you can do the same thing, with yourself. So, there's a couple of examples, I was reading into this, why do humans like looking at the sea so much? Why are sea views so cool? What is it about them? And I started researching into it because I always wonder these things. And I don't know if it's true or not, but it made sense to me. This was some guy's theory, and it was back a long time ago when man went to sea, he would go fishing, and when he went fishing, he would catch fish, and that was the first sort of intake of what's that thing called in fish? Omega-3. And the brain really loves omega-3. It's something it really likes. And so, man kind of formed a condition, ocean omega-3, which makes the brain feel good. It's just something that really likes. So that was a theory to why the water makes us feel good and happy, because it's formed all the way back from there. So when we're looking at a sea view, it's we've had that conditioned response formed for so long, but we don't even know that. It's just what we feel. And with the dog, if you have a dog, I know with my dog, at around a certain time, he'll even start salivating, and he doesn't know what time is or anything. It's just how it works. And you guys can do this with different senses. So you can use sound, smell, taste, all these different things to get you in a condition to be operating at your best, operating with certainty and being in a good state instead of a bad one. Does that make sense?
Can you give an example of how we would apply it to ourselves?
Yep.
I got an example actually. So for an hour after my first hour of work, I go through a certain routine of making a really good cup of coffee, and then I listen to the same 3 tracks every day. that I associate with just like being productive, focused, and it gets me back there every
Your
single time.
concentration after the first hour, or?
No, it's just something I noticed myself doing, and then I put more focus on it as I learned about this process, like putting little rituals throughout my day where I get myself like into certain emotional states that I want.
What's your sound stimulation?
Yeah, so I got some coming up. So, the big thing is you can't control your circumstances, right? So each day is going to be different, and you can't control what's going to happen. You might get stuck in traffic. I might get to my office and there might be 9 dudes just waiting to just unleash some crap on me. And, it's just inevitable that stuff's going to happen. And, you can control, so you can't change the external things, right? You can't change traffic or, things like this. But you can change the way that you react to those things. And that's the most powerful thing to have, because it means that, even with traffic, even with setbacks and, things like this, you're still going to be in your positive state. So what does it say? So successful people don't get any less bad circumstances than, anyone else. I mean, I used to think that wealthy people just inherited it or something like that. But then it's really cool. If you actually look at like the best athletes and everything, they often come from like nothing. And even business people, they come from nothing. So that's not true. And their circumstances are often like really, really, really bad. Like worse than you could imagine, right? Like living on the streets and, having to, 3 kids in 1 bedroom sort of stuff, and they still made it work. So it's not about circumstances. You know what I mean? But these guys got through that, and so successful people don't get any less bad circumstances, but they do control how they react to them. So, when you're faced with bad circumstances, like there's kind of 3 things you can do. Like one of them is just take no action at all and blame things. So, this is so common with people that aren't successful. It's because it's so easy. It's the easiest option. It's, there's traffic today. I'm going to have a bad day because there's traffic. And you know what? I'm having such a bad day. I'm just not even going to do any work because of the traffic. It's the traffic's fault, Or the other one is ignore it, and this is what I did for a long time. So ignore it and, take action and face the anxiety and uneasiness. So it's kind of like bulldozing through, like you're still doing it, you're still taking action, but, you feel uneasy about it. So you feel, a bit anxious or a bit guilty or something like that. And I mean, it's better than option 1, but it will really limit the success you can have. People that battle through it never excel wildly. So I've got a friend from school who is just a battler. So he doesn't think he's very smart, and all of these different things. Like his belief about himself isn't that good, but he seriously makes up for it with hard work. And the guy just studied his ass off and everything, and he's still got insanely good grades and everything. But there's other people out there that you see that don't work at all, probably aren't as smart, but they just their belief in their state's so good that they just still put them to shame. You know what I mean? So, understanding it, accepting it, and taking action in peace, and that's when you really excel, because that's when everything you do, you're not second guessing it, your belief about yourself's good, your state's good, and just everything seems to go your way. And that's why a lot of people that are really successful, it just looks kind of easy to them. And then, there's people that just grind really hard, and it doesn't seem to happen to those guys. And I think that's, yeah.
So why do you specifically use the word peace? Take action in peace.
So when you're taking action, it's like you don't have voices in your head. I remember when I used to take action, so let's say it's sending lumpy mail and following up on the phone. I used to, there was so many voices in my head, it was like noise. And it felt uneasy, and I felt kind of anxious and like I was doing the wrong thing, and I was still doing it. And that's, option 2. I mean, at the very beginning, I kind of was option 1. Then the next one was kind of option 2. And then now it's just like, it's really peaceful because I know that it's, what I'm doing helps other people, and that it's not, it's not bad, and there's no voices in my head saying you're an idiot for doing this and stuff like that. So does that make sense? So who's like bulldozing it at the moment?
Maybe kind of in between 2 and 3, trying to work the 3.
There's nothing wrong with bulldozing it, by the way. Like yeah. Tell me about it. It's like you finish a day of work and you just, as soon as your head touches the pillow, it's like, yeah. And then that's when, if you're bulldozing, you can't imagine doing more, And if you look at your current actions, like you're working, I remember like I used to work like more hours than I do now when I was bulldozing, and like I made way less, and I'd work harder and like get more worn out and things. And when you do get to stage 3, it's a lot more, it's not as exhausting and it doesn't take as much. So who's number 1, do you think? Anyone?
I think I speak for myself in combination of all 3. There's times when I don't take action, I know I should. And then there's probably mostly number 2, it's sort of facing the anxiety, knowing you're going to be anxious about doing it anyway because you have to. So, it'd be great to think that you could go from that anxiety state to taking action in peace. Not sure how to get there, not sure what that mechanism is, maybe it's limited beliefs. But yeah, I would say it's a combination of the 3.
Yeah? So it depends. So that might be like a state sort of thing then. Like depending on what state you're in, any one of these 3 things.
What do you do for somebody that doesn't believe that this will help them?
I'll keep trying to sell it, so I'll keep trying. Because it helped me. I mean, and I'm a really skeptical sort of person. Like when it comes to things, I need to see that it works, and who I follow, I need to really check. So like I told you when I wanted to move into selling these retainer things, like the first thing I did was who's the market leaders in here and how much money they're making. Like if you look at a market or an opportunity and the best guy is not making $1 million a year, then you just run. Because that means that if you can even get to like the level that he's working at, which is not what you want to do. You don't want to exhaust yourself. Like you're looking for the opportunities where guys are doing things wrong and they've got shit backwards and they're making a killing. Because that means if you go into that market and you don't have to do as much work, you make a lot more money, right? So I'm like really skeptical about things, and I always do my research before I will believe in something. And when it came to this stuff, I like I told you, I researched. I just didn't read the book. I looked back to the guy, his history, why he wrote the book, and then looked at people who had rewritten it and their stories. And I looked at athletes and successful people and saw that if they did things like this, and then I tried it myself after doing that, and it worked for me. And I've helped other people with it too, and it's worked for them. So as far as I'm aware, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I always felt that when something bad happens, you eventually have to understand it and accept it. So it just depends on if you want to do it right up front or just bulldoze through it and have a shitty day, shitty week, and then you still have to understand it and accept it at some point.
Yeah.
It's healthy.
It's like if someone passes away, right?
Yeah.
Then like that's number 3. Basically, have to accept it, make peace with it, move on.
Yeah, well, I'd guess you'd go through all of those 3 processes, right? Like, yeah.
In terms of like tangible steps for actually getting through the 3, what was that?
So I've got, towards the end of each thing, like I go over some actual action things. So I'll get to that pretty soon.
So I found that I'll go from 1 to 3, and then when I don't produce results, then I find myself going like reverse. It might be my targeting, but in terms of what's a good way to flip that? Just thinking about the time that I drove up to the ATM to deposit the check for the first client, or that helps me get through my day.
That helps me think of what you do then.
Like, what usually gets me out of my runs is I think about the day that I was depositing a $7,000 check. I actually took a picture in my car, in my hood and everything, and waiting to drive through ATM at B of A. So that helps me get through, but then when I get in action, I'm really result oriented, so I go back to.
So then you maybe you need to play, a few more scenarios in your imagination, because the real world's like a cruel playground, especially for someone starting out. Like, things are stacked not in your favor. And there's nothing you can do about that, but the way you make that start easier is by using your imagination to stack the positive rocks, right? And then it's not going to make it go away, but it's going to make it easier. And then when you do start to get a couple, that's when it will really build. So I'm going to go over some things to get into state. So hacking your own state at your own will. So this is this is probably what I think is so important. Like, if you're able to do something to get yourself into your prime. So like athletes, when there's a game time, when there's a fight and they step in there, they can't just say today's not the day, or I'm going to wait until I get into they have to have something to actually get themselves into that state. And it's not a fluke thing. It's not like people say, people say this shit every day. They're like, oh, I'm just having a bad day. Or successful people don't really say that. They're they'll just trigger every day to be a good one. And athletes, they do the same thing. I've always found a lot of similarities between athletes and sports. It's because a lot of anything you really do in your life that's going to be good and meaningful has a big mental game attached to it. Whether it's competing in sport or relationships and dating or business, everything has a big mindset element to it. And there's different things you can do. So to hack it, you want to. First of all, you've got to accept and understand your circumstances. You can't just ignore things. So, often the best way to start is to just write it down. So the first way you should start your day or anything is just what's the situation, what are your circumstances, and just write it down. Because if you ignore the truth, it's the worst thing you can do, right? You can't ignore the truth. You've got to just face it and be this is the situation. And often when you write it down and get it out on paper, it's not even as bad as you thought. And all of a sudden, it's weights being lifted off your shoulders as well. So I remember when I was starting out, I'd always keep a personal finances Microsoft Excel file, and because I was always worried about money. And I'd start by just writing it all down, getting it out there, and this is the current situation. And when it's out there, all of a sudden you feel a bit better, and instead of thinking is it good or is it bad and panicking, well, it's like a fact, it's in front of your face. And then once you've understood the circumstances and accepted them, then that's the first step. And then the second step is to use your senses to evoke a state of certainty and get yourself into your prime state. So everyone's different, but I'll show you some things that I do and that I've learned from other people. So like I've tried to do like all sorts of different things, like every different one, because this mindset stuff, like when I really associate it to these other things, it really became powerful. So do you have Airwaves gum in America? I don't think you do, because I went to 3 drugstores and couldn't find it. Neither Vicks Vapor Nasal. I don't think you have those either. But I went to some drugstores and found something similar. Do you want to hand them out, Jake? So I got everyone something similar. It's not the same, but... so it's like gum that has... You know how there's that gum and it kind of clears your airwaves? That's kind of like the smell and the taste and that mint. That's like kind of what I associate with like clarity for myself. So whenever something goes good for me and whenever I'm doing this like mindset stuff, I'll try and like tie it with this. And I actually learned this from, so I didn't come up with this myself. So I learned this Vicks Vapor stuff from Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. And I don't know whether he had cocaine in it or not. Like, maybe that's what he was doing, but he said that that's what really worked for him. He said it was smell, because smell's something that's not as cloudy as other senses. Like other senses, like the sound and they're noisy senses. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stimulus out there, but smell is something it's not very cloudy in terms of, the associations. Like often you can, tie in like sometimes, you'll always know like your girlfriend's perfume or something like that, and you'll smell it out in the street and immediately you think of it like that. But that's how like strong smell is. So I got you guys these ones. You can do whatever you want, but whenever I want to get into a state, like I just try and use all the senses. So taste is the Airwaves gum for me. The smell is the Vicks Vapor Inhaler. The smell one's real powerful for me. Same with taste. And then the sounds, so like a song that gets you motivated. It's often a cool way to start. Like before you're gonna, before I have to record a video or before I have to go to a meeting or anything like that, I'll listen to the song. I'll like do this little ritual thing, because it really helps a lot. And then sight, so vision board of things you want to achieve. That's why these things work well. Because I remember when I was younger, I'd get in my car before I'd go to work, and I'd drive along the most expensive street in my country, which was like a 5-minute drive away. Because just looking at that house, looking at the houses and like driving along that street and looking at the view just got me pumped up. And I don't know what it was about it, but it just got me real pumped up. Or looking at like a nice car or something, like after I saw one, or I remember the first time I ever went in a helicopter, like when I got out of it, I was just like, I need one of these. Like I'm going to like, I need to get to work. Like I need to end this holiday and get home, like back to the office. And everyone's different. So I'm not saying these things are going to work for you. They're what's worked for me. And you can use any combination of any of these things. And the trick is to, when you're doing your imagination process, is to anchor it to these things as well. So when I first understood mindset, I said it as a logical statement. This is what you probably saw if you went through the video. I said it as a logical statement, imagined it in detail in my imagination, and then assigned emotion to it. And then, then I learned about these senses things, and it's become more powerful. And touch, like clicking your fingers, is like for me, because I just searched for like Google search for things that, like things you could do, actions you could do that released endorphins or something. And clicking your fingers releases a lot of endorphins. And it kind of makes you feel sharp, or it makes me feel sharp. And so, doing these things like gets me like pumped up and sort of like in state. And so that, you guys asked what do I do? Well, I usually go a bit over the top on things. So I've did every single one of these things. And I found this when I was searching around, like Tony Robbins, I found he has this little trampoline. And this was actually real cool, and I'm going to get one now, and put it in my office. Because like it's definitely one of those actions that it's going to kind of shock you out of something. It's kind of going to get you pumped up. It's like you see what I mean? So, it says getting in state. So moments before taking the stage at Dreamforce, which is Salesforce's annual conference, Robbins does some trampoline training to get him energized for the 3-hour program. So, people do use this stuff. Like, you'll often find if you watch a fight, like the boxers in the training rooms, they always have headphones on. They're like listening to their music, and they even walk out there with it, and they just get it taken off at like the last point. And Tony Robbins with his trampoline, like I think everyone will kind of have their own sort of ritual before they get into something, and I think it's really powerful if you can create one of these for yourself.
So do you do this like every morning or just before a specific event? Like
The trampoline, or
just these types of things?
I've never done this.
I'm saying like
but
the taste, the smell, like these types
oh
of
yeah, so the smell. So because it's a lot of stuff, so I don't always have all of it on me, right? The smell one is what I always have in my drawer, and it's something that you can carry around and stuff. The clicking of the fingers is a good one, and often I'll just look at like photos of something that I want to make me like pumped up. So a lot of the time I'd like look at something I want, like a car or something, and listen to a song I really like, and that kind of gets you pumped up. You know what I mean? If you don't have access to that, then you might need something else. Just as long as you've got some sort of process to get yourself in state. Does this make sense?
You can jump up and down in your bed before tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to get one of those things though. Looks good. And then this one, actually I found there was like a funny story behind this. So who's seen that Wolf of Wall Street movie? So you know how he does that thing in the movie? Turns out that like he's an amazing actor, right? Like he's so good. And he, to get into a state to perform like that, that's the top sort of % of acting, and acting's quite hard, and he does it really well. Well, that's actually what he does before he has a scene. And what happened was the director saw him doing that and was like, we've got to get you to do that in the film. So like, that's actually his thing, to like get into state. And the movie scene is just because the director saw him doing that. So that's, even his way of, that's his sort of ritual to, because I guess in his profession, the tones of his voice are important. And if you remember, he used different tones to probably to get them right, and then different gestures and stuff, because these are the things an actor has to use. So that was another example. So, your state is everything. It controls your ability to succeed at any time. So a bit of a spelling mistake here. Don't know how to say this. Oh, it starts with recognizing what you do, how you feel, and what you focus on when you're operating at your best. So why I got you earlier on in the exercise was to think of it in a experience that went really well. And then, what senses were heightened for you. Those are some of the senses that you might want to use to build this one. So recognizing what you do, how you feel, and what you focus on when you're operating at your best. So quick exercise right now. Take a few minutes to write down what you do when you're unstoppable. So how you feel and how you're focused. So if you had to come up with a little ritual, what would it be? So I remember another Dan Kennedy story. I remember I was reading that book it was one of his books on mindset. I think it was Zero Resistance Selling. But he said that, families and people often have these drawers or in their house or on the kitchen bench. They sit all their bills, and like bills are such a a negative thing. Like a lot of people see the pile in there that it makes them depressed and everything. Or there's this drawer in their kitchen that's just filled with bills, and so he made sure that all his bills were stored away, and he'd just always keep, this is like classic Dan Kennedy, he'd just always keep like 50 grand in cash, just like sitting in his drawer. So like, so it would have like the opposite sort of effect. He felt like there was plenty, so no need to worry, and bills weren't anywhere to be seen. So like, that's another sort of state thing.
When I was at university, I had this second-hand bookshop, so I bought and sold textbooks for people, like a little business. But the coolest thing about it is I always had like $2 grand in my pocket at any time. So it made me just feel absolutely awesome because I could always buy drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
So I still had to pay some of that back to some people.
And I mean, like, in New Zealand, money has a real distinct smell. Does it have a smell in America? Yeah, and that's like an association, right? Yeah. So you can see how this sort of stuff works. So, yeah, this is pretty much the same as the last slide. So, to get into your right state, you want to write down your current situation, really, understand it, come to grips with it, and be comfortable with it. Like, the truth is really important. People that ignore the truth, it's not a good way. You first want to get it out there, and then, you can use these different things. So, I mean, if you can, see, does everyone have like at least a few of these in their ritual? In their way, like just at least a few of these senses, because it's real powerful to have, because your brain is just like a thing sitting on its own. The only way it gets any data is by all these senses. Like, these are the only ways to the brain. And, you need, some of them can help it, like, get you into that state. The more, the better, I think. So, the other one is, like, dealing with a rut. So, I've found that, sometimes things are just, like, I call this a rut. So, like, sometimes you're just having such a shit day that you doing your, like, smelling your stick just isn't going to, like, fix it, right? So it's not always going to do that. Like, it's a real good way, like, for most days, but there's just some days which just need some, some real cure. And these are the, like, only things I've, like, ever found that can get you out of that. So, like, impact training, I think this works, like, the best. So there's been research on this, like, punching a punching bag, like, releases the most stress and, gets you out of, like, a state like that. So they've done experiments with putting them in offices and things like that. And then, it's real intense things. It's like things that are going to, like, shock your body, like, because that's what you need when you're that wound up. Like, there's some people that, some people are so worked up, and then someone just slaps them, like, to get them out of it, because they just need something like that to get out of it. So, these are the only things I've ever sort of seen that can do it. It's like intense weights or a run, impact training, swim. It's like diving in a pool that's kind of a shock, and, there's different senses, a cold shower. So a good thing, I think, for you to have, as well as, your ritual, is also a technique to get yourself out of a rut. So, I mean, if you tell yourself this and you write it down, then next time you're in a rut, you know what to do. It's just you don't feel hopeless. So, it doesn't have to be one of these, but, write it down. What's going to be your mechanism to get yourself out of this? So, any questions on what we were just talking about?
How
I'm curious if anybody has anything that's not one of those three.
Mm-hmm. So I'll bring them back up. For getting out of a rut.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I'm curious. I use exercise as a way to get myself in that.
Just going for a walk outside while listening to music helps me.
Sleep. I eat a lot and then sleep.
I hope no one says alcohol or getting drunk.
I find going to bed early sometimes, like you're just like, this day's crap. You know,
Get rid of
you just say, cut your losses. And I just tell myself, you know, even though I had a really bad day, kind of tomorrow's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna go to bed, I'm gonna wake up, just kind of visualize myself getting out of that, and then usually the next day is great.
Cool. See, that's good so long as because it can't happen all week, right? Because if you're in a rut, then you're always just going to sleep for a week, yeah. So that's why like having something that can be done in like half an hour to an hour is quite good, because if you're in a rut, sometimes you like, if you've got a deadline, like you just need to get something done, you know? And that's why I like to have something that can be done in like an hour. I don't think it can really be anything less than an hour, because it really takes a lot to get out of that state. Like, it's amazing when you're in one of those things. It's just like.
I'll give you a perfect example. For me, I've struggled with sending out proposals after consultations. Because you think, yeah, that consultation was great, and then you start fearing rejection. So your way of putting out the rejection is putting out the proposal. And so for me, what I did after my last consultation is I told them, I'm going to have the proposal to you by Friday, which is 2 days from now. I said, what are 2 times that work for you right now for us to go over it on the phone? So, I mean, of course, I was up till like 3 a.m. Thursday night trying to get the proposal done. But I got it done, but I would love to have somebody get me out of the rut, because I was rough for that.
Yeah, so making like declarations to others is a real good way to get shit done.
Yeah.
I do it all the time, and it almost kills me. I'm like, oh.
It's funny how you did it just when we started, when the videos will get up here.
Yeah.
In about 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, shit. You mean you guys have experienced that stuff, right? Like, I always say it because I want to be held accountable, but I almost do this stuff a bit too much that I really strain myself. Yeah. But it's a better problem to have that, I think, than not doing anything at all, you know? So any other questions on that topic?
Can you talk about your morning ritual?
Sure. So, I mean, I always like to listen to music. So, like, because you've got to do a bunch of things before you go to work. So, one thing I found when you're working from home, or like when you're working from an office that's just pretty much below your house, which is like the same thing, which is where my office is now. I probably would rather have my office about a 10-minute drive, because that would make a nice ritual, you know what I mean? Having it so close to home and working from home is often hard. You never want to go immediately from like bed to a computer. Like, never do that. That's not a good thing to do. So, like, I always sleep with my phone on airplane mode, and I try to have like electrics away from the bed. And then, you know, I try not to touch any of that stuff until I've gone through a little process. And it's just, you know, making sure you have breakfast. That's a big one, because it gets you later on in the day. So, you know, don't fool yourself by saying, if I skip this 10-minute breakfast, I can get 10 more minutes of work done. Like, bad move. You know, don't skip like having a shower, and like, then I like to wear nice-ish clothes, like a dress shirt and pants, because it makes me feel like I'm going to work, you know? Like, whereas when I used to sometimes just not have breakfast and just go straight to the computer and not have a shower, and it's like, because you can, right? It's like a luxury for a while, and then like you start thinking about it, and it's like, where do you draw the line between like work and home? So, you know, the main things is, you know, I listen to some music, and I always take about a whole hour before I go to the computer, a whole hour. So it's, you know, music, shower, getting dressed into like some proper clothes, having something to eat, and a coffee as well. And then once I've done that, I like open up my stuff and get started. So that's like my morning routine. And then, then if I'm going to do something where I need, so the other good thing is not to like abuse like your ritual. Like if you're just going to write email, like you don't need to, be in that state. Like you got to save it for the times where you need to be in performance, So like I'm pretty sure like a lot like these guys, like these athletes wouldn't do that intense ritual before just like, just cooking before they cook breakfast or something, you know what I mean? So it's like you always want to have a morning ritual for every day, which covers the basics like, hygiene, shower, like presentation, and, food. And so that's a good one. But if you're doing sales or a video, something where you need to be like operating at like your peak, that's when you want to have something like this. Does that make sense?
What do you usually do for breakfast?
I found the best things smoothies for me, because I'm not very hungry in the morning. Like physical, well, I guess it's all physical stuff, isn't it? Like savoury stuff, like and cereals and stuff, I just can't really eat. So for me, it's smoothies and you can also cram a lot of like good stuff into a smoothie, and it's like kind of cheating. Because if you can put like half an avocado and like a banana and like a whole bunch of stuff that you wouldn't eat if it was out on the plate, and I really like that, because if someone served me like half an avocado and all of this greenery, there's no way I'd eat it. But when it's in a drink, it's just like boom, and you're like, I really just got that stuff inside me. I'm like pretty healthy, you know what I mean? So that's what I've found, and it's fast too. So that's what I've found. Yeah. So the best I find, so like, I'm guilty of making some mistakes with all this stuff too. It's like, I'm definitely not perfect, But I do know if I did this stuff every day, I would be even further on than I am now, But bedtime, I found the best thing to do before you go to bed is just to read. So the worst thing you can do is be on your phone or your laptop. Like, it is not good. If you've been emailing and doing stuff and then you close the laptop and roll over, or you shut your phone off, that's real bad. Your sleep's not as good, and your mind's racing and stuff. Like reading really calms me down, and I feel like a sleep is better if I've read before it. It really slows your mind down. Anything else?
What time do you wake up?
It depends, man, like on a lot of things.
When do you want to wake up?
So I've found when I'm happiest, so this is what I've figured out, like when I'm happiest, it's when I wake up like before the sun, so like 5 or 6. I found probably if I had to choose a time where I'm the most happy at 5 o'clock, there's just something about waking up at that time, the world's quiet, and like when you wake up late, like at 10, it's like everything's buzzing, you know what I mean? And you feel like you're behind everyone, and everything's like kind of already in chaos. So I've found, and there is a massive, actually, like when I was doing research on this, there's a massive correlation between success and the earliness at which someone wakes up. So, like, if you look at successful people and you ask them what time they wake up, it's almost always like a crazy time, like 5 or 6. Sometimes it's 4. So, and there has been studies, and there is a tie there. And I've found personally, I get more done if I wake up then, and I feel happier too, because you feel like you've achieved something,
So if you're trying to get up at 5, what time are you going to aim to be in bed by?
I just like 7 hours. So whatever 7 hours before that is.
That'd be like, you travel late and go to bed, like how long?
Oh, generally an hour reading. So if you needed to be in bed asleep by 11 and to bed by 10, Yeah.
So you mentioned you're pretty skeptical. I'm curious how you keep that from getting in the way of acting on what you've discovered or what you're trying to do. How do you keep that under wrap?
Well, if someone really successful is doing it, it's good enough for me. You know, like if I can't find anyone doing it, or the only people I can find doing it aren't that successful, I won't do it. And it's why like I had massive problems at like school and university, because you know the teacher would be broke, and I'd be like, well, why should I listen to you? You know, like what can you teach me about entrepreneurship? You ride a bike to university, you know. And it was true. Like he'd never started a company, and he was head of entrepreneurship at my college, so it really amazed me, you know. And he rode a bike, so it was hard for me to take what he said and really value it, you know. Whereas, you know, if Elon Musk told me what he did before work and before bed, I'd be like, I'm going to try that, you know. Like that's kind of I'm skeptical so long as someone really good's doing it, yeah.
What type of stuff do you read daily? Like, you know, just as far as keeping up with information, things like that. Do you read any news? How do you kind of filter outside content that you read and outside of your business to keep up to date with, you know, just important things happening in the world that are relevant to you?
So I ignore the news completely. So I don't have a TV and don't read the newspaper ever. Like, I just don't look at anything. Oh yeah. But I'm not even doing that now, you know. But like, yeah, like I completely ignore the news, because especially now, like those feeds that they've got on their apps, like it doesn't stop. Like you'd be like, you couldn't keep up if you had like, I don't know what the big ones are, like MS, whatever the big ones are called, BBC or whatever, Fox. If you had all of those apps and you're constantly trying to keep, you couldn't have any time to do anything. Most of the time, it's depressing stuff too. Yeah.
Do you read anything, like any digest or anything that's like business?
No news at all. I just try to keep it to just books, really. Yeah. I mean, if something important happens, I'll generally hear about it, you know, and then I'll have a look. Like, if it's important news, I'll hear about it somehow, and I'll go have a look.
So, for instance, the Tony Robbins article on...
So I went looking for that.
So you were...
Yeah. Okay. So when I had to do this stuff, I started searching around for state management and what guys were doing, and you know, what I've done with pretty much all of this stuff is linked it to someone way, way, way more successful than me, you know, to really prove that this is, you know, the right stuff to follow. Yeah.
How do you decide what books to read on a regular basis? You know, you finish a book, how do you decide what authors to read, you know, who to kind of follow to have some sort of direction for what you read?
It all depends on like the stage in which I'm at, like in business, you know. So when I was back when mindset was an issue for me, like it was all sort of mindset, self-help sort of stuff. And then before that, it was all about like direct response and marketing and sales, and now it's moved more towards like breaking plateaus, you know. So it's like my biggest issues now is, you know, I'm making like so much money per year, and I'm pretty much like maxed out. So like, I can't work harder to get to the next level. It's like something has to change, you know, like what's that next step? So like a lot of stuff on 80-20, a lot of stuff on hiring and managing other people, a lot of stuff on, you know, structures, like, because that's the problem I'm having right now. So it's generally associated to a problem I'm having. Yeah, I don't read things that are like if someone mentions a book's really good, I'll buy it from Amazon. It just goes on the shelf. Like I just have a shelf full of hundreds of books. I haven't even read a lot of them, but because when someone says a book's really good, and I want to at least get it so I don't forget. Yeah.
Would you be willing to put some of the best books you've read in certain categories together, so that if one of us is struggling with a particular category, you at least have something you've read that you can recommend for that area?
Yeah. So while we're on mindset right now, I mean, I'll tell you now so you can write it down. If you want to dig deeper into this stuff, it's Think and Grow Rich and Psycho-Cybernetics. Another one is called Release Your Brakes. Another one is called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. and off the top of my head, zero resistance selling, yeah.
Hey Sam, I've really enjoyed a lot of your videos and stuff. I'm wondering, sort of, other than the profit incentive, what your motivation is for teaching other guys to do what you do. And I wonder, is it helping you with your business? That is sharpening your own skills by teaching us what you do.
Yeah, so, I mean, it has a cash flow benefit, but also I find that, like, if you're forced to teach it, like, or put it down, like, often it really sharpens your own understanding. So, like, when I made these slides for this, my head was, like, buzzing afterwards with, like, my own company, you know what I mean, and my own stuff. I was like, it's because it'd been a while since I'd touched mindset as a topic. Like, I made that video, I think, 2 years ago now, the one that's on the site, on Cash Flow Consulting. So when I revisited it, like, you know, it got me thinking again. So reasons, I mean, yeah, there's profit incentive. There's also my end goal, like my big end vision is to buy and sell and invest in other companies, like venture capitalist sort of thing. And I feel like publishing information for a history of time is like an awesome way to position yourself later on. Also, like having some people and success stories and stuff like of companies, and you know, that's going to really help me later on as well. So it kind of, you know, it has cash flow incentive. It also, you know, sharpens my understanding, but also, you know, it feeds towards the later vision as well.
Was that one of your first one? I think it was a Mixer G interview. Was one of your first?
Yeah.
Is that sort of where it all began?
Yeah, so I didn't I did that interview, and then people were like, I figured out that people kind of liked what I had to say, and I was like, that was the first time I realized that. And then people would like ask me if they'd like offer to pay me to like do something, and I was like, you know, there's probably an opportunity here. And that's how the first little one, I think, was only like 10 people that I got to pay me, and it was just held on Skype and Dropbox, and then turned into the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's, you know, my motivation. Is there any more questions with this stuff, or?
I have one more quick question. When we were talking about the 3 different stages, it made me think of one of the things that has come up in the group is the temptation to get, you know, discount your first few jobs or something like that, like to get easy wins. So how do you kind of combat that? Because I think I think a lot of people, like, sorry, I don't know your name, but he was talking about getting that first check, and I think that even getting a small check, I think it's that gives you that good feeling of
yeah. So.
Because I want to add to that, I don't know that that's a really good idea to lower your, you know, you've got to charge a certain amount to make it worth it, and the whole model works based on charging an appropriate price. So
in my experience, the reason why I've taught it the way I have is, in my experience, it's sometimes easier to win the bigger ones than the smaller ones. So that's if you can get your head around that, you know, if you can pull your mindset straight and actually attempt it, I believe it's easier. Like, I find it a lot easier to close a 10 grand deal than a 1. Like, it always is like that. But if you really don't believe that, then it's a different story, you know? And then maybe that is what you need. You know, if you really have mindset issues and you believe that's what you need, then, you know, that's probably the right step, yeah.
Well, I think it also, if you're going after a $10,000 client, it filters out a lot of the lower, you know, the people that can't really afford, you know, to spend $10,000 on something.
Yeah, like, I've honestly found like that when selling websites, which is what, you know, most of the course has been on, like that spot between 5 and 10 is quite easy, you know. Like, I could do those things, like, you know, I could sell as many as I wanted, but they're just not that great to fulfill on after you sell. Yeah.
So why do you think it is easier to sell in that 5 to 10 range versus?
I think that's just like, you know, you've got the cheap guys at the bottom, then you've got the highly customized ones at the top where they want their own CMS and shit. And then you've got this one in the middle that is just a WordPress with a theme, a basic sort of thing, and it's that good price point, you know what I mean? It's like with clothing, for example, you've got your, you know, like your Versace, right, at the very high end, yields the most money per sale. The very bottom end, you've got some stuff from like China somewhere. But the company that actually makes the most money is in that middle spot, you know? It's the one that sells at kind of just above average prices to the bulk of people, you know? Okay. So their average sale price isn't as much as Versace, but their volume's big. It's like fine dining restaurants, like the absolute finest dining restaurant in Manhattan, right? It would, like, its prices are ridiculous, but, and then you've got the street food, which is bad, but that McDonald's makes the most money in food, you know? It's that middle piece. It's like the perfect balance of simplicity, like a homogeneous offering, which is something very similar, and price, like, and scale. And that's what I think the same thing is true with websites. It's like you've got the real bottom, you've got the top, but there's that spot, yeah.
Just curious, as you read these books, do you take notes in the books? Do you have a separate notebook, or do you just kind of keep it?
So I got the same process. I always read physical books, never, ever, ever, ever the other ones. I just can't. I hate digital stuff. Like, in an age where there's so much crap, just flashing and stuff, you know, I like to keep some things on paper. And books, I always read paper ones. And I'll get a pen, and everything that makes me go, oh, that's awesome, like, circle it. And then at the end, I'll generally flick through and then take those and write it into a sheet, just the main points. And then I'll like print the 2 sheets or 3 sheets and just fold it and put it in the book. So then if I need to come back to that book, it's circled and there's the bullets, like, yeah. Yeah.
In the context of mindset, like when you're reversing it, when you're sitting with a client, and then like reference things comes up, what's the best way to go, like handling their mindset on the other side of the table? Because I walked away from a $10,000 monthly retainer last week, all because of a reference, not having them. I mean, I have them, but didn't want to like. How do you handle their mindset when it comes to references?
You can reverse risk. It's a big one, you know, like reverse the risk. So they're in that state because of the risk. Like you haven't got references. You haven't done it before. This is a gamble for me, right? So I mean, if you reverse the risk, if you say like, look, if this doesn't work, I'll refund you completely. Like that, you know, those are things that can help with that sort of stuff. Yeah.